Just now, Rutte said he had had a productive conversation with Hegseth and that they had agreed on the need to put Ukraine in the best possible position ahead of negotiations. Well, listening to that press conference with me, Douglas Herbert, our foreign affairs commentator. And Doug, I wonder, big picture, what you made of the message of Mark Rutte there today.
Well, a few things struck me. I mean, first of all, how little can you actually say in 20 minutes? NATO Secretary Generals, Nadia, are notoriously wooden in their language. They manage to say very, very little of substance or of news value in many, many words. Mark Rutte is a steady as she goes, if ever there was one, steward of the NATO, of the Western Alliance. We weren't expecting any groundbreaking revelations today, but what struck me here was the degree to which this relatively new, he recently took over from Jens Stoltenberg, relatively new NATO chief, bent over backwards to make it sound like and look like that he is not in any ways at loggerheads with the man now occupying the Oval Office, Donald Trump. In terms when he was talking about, in terms of Europe's spending, in terms of defense production, in terms of their priorities on how they want to end the war. He literally was marching, at least rhetorically, in lockstep with Donald Trump. There was no daylight between them whatsoever, which is, I say it's a takeaway and remarkable in many ways to hear that the degree to which he wants to sound like he and Donald Trump are on the same page in this and nothing to see here, carry on, because as you heard from the very pointed questions among the journalists present, they see this very much as a deplorable situation, one of the most difficult binds perhaps that NATO has been in decades in its post-war existence, essentially being dumped, let's use a blunt term here, being dumped by its far and away biggest member, the United States, and left to essentially go it alone. Obviously, the Secretary General is not in a position to basically say, well, bye-bye, U.S. It still needs the U.S. on side, and he will go through any rhetorical circumlocutions necessary to make it sound as if Donald Trump and America are still involved in NATO. But you heard these questions. The reporters saying, but is it not good tactics to essentially make concessions between a U.S. president and Vladimir Putin before peace talks have even started, and not even really implicating Ukraine in this equation? Rutte was, like I said at the beginning, steady as she goes. He wanted to underline durable and lasting peace, a peace that he says needs to have Ukraine in a position of strength, which implies that Europe will somehow continue to back Ukraine and not force it to accept any sort of peace if it's not on the terms that Ukraine sees as legitimate and a just peace. But like I said, the big takeaway, this is a man who is bending over backwards in his rhetoric to march in lockstep with a man who couldn't be treating NATO more shabbily right now if he tried, Donald Trump.
All right, Douglas Herbert, thank you very much indeed. We'll be hearing from Doug more later on this afternoon, because we're waiting as well at NATO for Pete Hegseth, Trump's Secretary of Defense, to speak. We will bring that to you live when it gets underway. But first,